Hello, I am Dominique Perrier and you're watching liveprog.
I was 16 years old, had worked all summer, had earned some money and bought my very first CD player. And they were brand new in those days. It was quite special to have one and quite special also to buy CDs. And they were quite expensive in those days. But I do remember buying this one album. I don't know why I bought it, I liked the cover, and I remember when I listened to it in the store, I was blown away and I wanted to have it. And I still have it. 25 years later, I still have that album. Now, I never dreamt that ever, when I started out as being a reviewer, I'd do a review of that particular album. I've done reviews of albums that I did not expect, but, well, because they released a remastered version of it. But in this case, I didn't see that happening. And yet, it happened. Thanks to Esoteric Records, who not just did a remaster of this album, but of a total of 6 albums by that musician. He's a well-known musician, and therefore I am really honored and really proud that I finally can feature his music in liveprog, that I can finally bring you a review of this album, Direct by Vangelis. Of course not this one, because this is the original album I bought in 1988 when it was released. So this album can celebrate its 25th birthday. Wow, that's a big deal, and it still looks very good and it still sounds very good. And here we have the remastered version by Esoteric Records, which looks a little bit different. It's a digipack, it's white, and I'll show you when we open it up. You see the artwork is also on the CD on this one. And if I open up the original version, you will see it looks a little bit different. And I noticed the tiniest mistake on this one, in the first track. Because the first track is labeled here, The Motion of the Stars. But on this one, it's called The Motion of Stars. So it's a tiny, tiny little mistake, but no biggie there. No problem there, we can forgive them. Well, here we have them, 25 years apart from each other. And all these versions are remastered by Vangelis himself. Now, wow, that is a big deal. I mean, let's be honest, Vangelis is an icon. In electronic music, he is an icon. Not just in electronic music, also, of course, in film music. I mean, just look at the amazing scores that he has composed and recorded. On the top of my head, I mean, the most obvious Vangelis album is, of course, the soundtrack to Blade Runner. I mean, that's a sci-fi classic, everybody knows that. Everybody knows the music, but also 1492, Conquest of Paradise, that is also something very well known. And of course, Chariots of Fire. Well, I could go on, because if you look at the discography of Vangelis, very impressive. He released a lot of albums. He has an immense history in music. So I could talk hours about this man, but we're not gonna do that. I'm gonna try and stay focused on, well, I'll use this one, this album, because that is what I'm here to tell you about, the remastered version of Direct. Now, I'm gonna put this one away, but keep it close just in case. And as I said, we'll talk about this album. In my opinion, if you look at all the albums that Vangelis has released, I still find Direct being somewhere on a very lonely spot, way up. You know, this album stands out so much in his whole body of work that I still think this is a timeless album. he released all kinds of different electronic music. He experimented with all kinds of sounds. And also when he started working on the Direct album, he changed his whole way of working radically, I would say. And that might be the reason why this album is so good. He had traveled through Europe. I mean, he was born in Greece, he moved to France, he moved to the UK, and then at a certain point he moves back to Greece in 1987, and that's when he records this album. So it maybe has to do with that he went back to his home country, but he also, if you look at the very little information I could find, because Vangelis does not have his own website, he does not have a Facebook page, he is a bit of a mystery. There's very little information to be found of him. There are some Wikipedia pages that give you a little bit of information, but officially, you know, he's untouchable. He's isolated. You know, he's a hermit almost. So we have to guess a little bit, and I had to dig up some websites and some Wikipedia pages to find out a little bit more. But when he moved back to Greece, he started to try out a different kind of approach in music. The normal approach, for as much as that exists, is that musicians compose music and then they start recording it. And that is the way that Vangelis used to work. But when he started working on Direct, he wanted to do it differently. He wanted to basically compose as he recorded his music, or record his music as he was composing. So it was a more organic process. And that brings forth a really interesting sound on this album. The nice thing about it is that it is electronic music, but it does not sound like electronic music. And that is the way that the instrumentation that Vangelis uses on this album, but also the fact that he plays drums. You know, I saw the photo in the booklet. I'll show you. I thought that's a really cool photo. There are two photos I'm going to show you because, you know, that kind of tells you a lot about Vangelis. I mean, just look at this one. I think this is really cool. I mean, I never thought, you know, he'd be a drummer, but that is what he does, and that is what you hear on this album, and that makes it so cool. But this photo, I love that so much. I think this is really incredible. I mean, look at him sitting all built in with all these synthesizers and vintage synthesizers nowadays, but back then state of the art. You know, that is so cool as well. But he used all that technique to create this really beautiful music. It's very bombastic when you listen to it, but it's also very symphonic. It can be very calming, very classical at times. There are some songs on the album that almost feel a bit like New Age. For example, the song First Approach, which is really a calm song. But you have that opera song in Glorianna, Hymn à la Femme, where there is a vocalist present. I mean, there are two vocalists on this album that are both not credited. On Glorianna we have this really opera singer on it, and in the last track there's a sound technician doing some spoken words, but you know, when you listen to that with the music, it sounds really fantastic. The start of the album is so incredibly beautiful. I mean, I really crank up the volume. The first 5 songs, wow. I mean, after 25 years this album still blows me away, and when I listen to it, and especially, I mean, I've been comparing the original version with the remaster and trying to figure out, do I hear a difference? Not so much. That is to say, I don't hear any major differences. I do hear some differences in the sound, that it sounds a little more clear, a little more powerful than the original version. And again, you know, it is remastered by the master himself, by Vangelis. He really used modern day technology to brush up the, well, timeless sound on the album Direct. The first few tracks, The Motion of Stars, the first track is really bombastic, it's really heavy, but then The Will of the Wind and Metallic Rain. These two songs are really my favorites on the album. Especially I love the transition between the two songs, but also in the way they build up a certain excitement in the song. And in that case, I'd say Metallic Rain is probably the most impressive song on the album, because that really builds up and wow, I wish my stereo could go even louder than it can. You know, that is, I love that so much, because it really builds up and then you have that huge, massive crescendo coming in. Wow, you know, after 25 years, that still gives me goosebumps. That still sends shivers down my spine. And that shows what a classic album Direct really is. Not that every song is really awesome. You know, there are a couple of tracks that I like, but there are some that I sometimes rather skip. For example, the Oracle of Apollo, which is mainly sampled harp that you hear. It's not one of my favorite songs. It still sounds nice, but I don't like it very much. Glorianna also, that opera thing, is not my thing. So, you know, I still, when I listen to it, I like it, but it's not my favorite track. And Rotation's Logic also, it is a nice track, but it doesn't really work for me. But basically that's sort of the middle of the album. I mean, the first 5 tracks is really awesome, and then it goes down a little bit. And then, after those tracks, with Message, it already picks up again, and Message again is such a beautiful track. I like that very much with that sampled baby sound in it, and again that builds up to a certain excitement. Again, a fantastic song. The album ends on such a high note, I would say, with Intergalactic Radio Station. I mean, already the music is really fantastic. It almost sounds like a rock song, because there's a lot of drums on this album, a lot of percussion on this album, but there are also a lot of guitar sounds on it. And of course it's all sampled, you know, but it sounds really fantastic when you listen to it. And as I said, that last track, the longest track on the album, it gives you the idea of a rock song. And then when that spoken word comes in, that adds a lot of dimension to this song and to this album, and it ends really fantastic. You know, this is an album that really makes me excited. What's a little bit more exciting is that I have 2 other remasters to review as well, being a few of the early albums by Vangelis. But I wanted to start out with this one because this is, in my opinion, the Vangelis album anyone should have. I say this is a timeless classic. After 25 years, when I play this album, it still sounds as powerful, as clear, as melodious, as symphonic as when I bought it in 1988. Now, that shows that it is a timeless album, that it is a classic. For that reason, I am awarding this album, and it's gonna be one of the few that get this, but I'm gonna award this album with a 10. And it is deserved, because it has been proven that this album is a classic. Now, stay tuned for more Vangelis albums, but definitely make sure you get this album, Vangelis Direct. And if you don't like electronic music, don't worry, because you won't hear it when you listen to this album. I can guarantee you, you will absolutely love it. The end. Wow, Vangelis on liveprog. Whew, I still can't believe it. Now, what is your favorite Vangelis album? Let me know as a comment of YouTube. And of course, let me know what you think of Direct. Do you also think it is a timeless classic, or do you have a different opinion? As I said, leave a comment on my YouTube channel and let me know. And while you're there, click on the subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all the new videos that I will be uploading. Also, you can visit my website, liveprog.com, and you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter. And I hope you will see me at a new review.
Nylon oxygen, access to concrete, etc., etc., etc. Oh, by the way, it's been a beautiful morning. What a morning. Great morning. It's a great morning.